Well, if you are on your fall break and you're here, I'm hoping you're enjoying it. If you're fall break and you're watching online, you should be here. But it's great having you anyways. Hope you're enjoying it. So we asked you a question, most disappointing movie you've watched, and that was a great question because a lot of you have opinions. Spider-Man 3. Honestly, anything after Spider-Man 1 was a disappointment, but you're right. Oh, yeah. Sausage Party, which really, did you expect anything about that? There's a few of you that said The Joker. I haven't seen The Joker, but a lot of you said, no way. Sharknado. The Greatest Showman. You need to shut your mouth. Some people just want to watch the world burn. And... the slideshow of all the decisions I've made. Ooh. You can make an appointment with any one of us if you need to work through some of that. Okay, the Fantastic Four remake, let's be honest. No Fantastic Four movie was ever really good. They weren't. They were never that good. The video of my birth, that's gross. Zoolander 2, Cabin in the Woods, La La Land, all the Disney movie remakes. Lion King wasn't that great. I mean, the movie is good, but the remake, Okay, actually, to be honest, one that I totally agree with you on. Okay, first of all, I'm just really happy no one put Downton Abbey. Honestly, I am a Downton Abbey fanatic. I'm no longer silent about that. I am happy to share that. Like, I've installed bells in my kids' bedrooms. So like, ding, 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 Harriet. I love that movie. But no one put that. I love it. But one, I totally agree with, and I actually just watched it this weekend. I waited till everything kind of died down, and I just got Disney Plus for my kids, and I watched Endgame, and I'm like, eh. And there's a lot of you that put that. I enjoyed Infinity War more than Endgame, but I had a hard time being invested in Endgame. I was actually, at the end of it, I was like, that was a bit disappointing. You know what? Like, I know some of you right now, you're just like, I'm never coming again, and you are the worst human being. But and to be fair, like superhero movies, there's only very few of them that I actually really enjoy. I had a hard time getting to Endgame, and there was all this hype, and I was waiting for it, and I was watching it with my son, and I was like, let's watch it, let's sit down, let's see what we finally get to it, and I'm like, Josh, I'm having a hard time watching it, and he's like, shut up, Dad. And disappointments. I mean, like, throughout my life, I think about all my life, and I'm sure you can too, and you think about, like, disappointments, you can probably think of these different, like, flashback moments in your life, or, if you had that, like, awkward slideshow machine, right? And you can think about those moments. I think about, like, how disappointed I was in, like, how poorly I did in high school. I think back and I'm like, man, you were such an idiot. Like, why didn't you just try? Just like even 10% harder. It would have made a huge difference in everything else. Like, if you just read a stupid book, right? Like, it would have been so much better. I think of, like, things I wish I would have asked my dad before he passed away. Like, I live with some of that disappointment. It was just like, it happened so fast. We didn't really see it coming. And I know it wasn't totally my fault. Well, it's just, I wish I could have asked certain questions. I wish I could have known certain things. I wish I could have said certain things. There's some of that disappointment. I've been married for 13 years, and it's been awesome. And I love and I adore my wife. But to be honest, there have been moments in my marriage where I have been disappointed. There's been those times, have you ever had those where you get what you want and then you realize it doesn't always pan out the way you want? And that's the way it works. Disappointment. I love my kids, and you want certain things to happen. You want your kids to have a certain way, but as they grow up, you realize that certain things are like, man, I wish I would have done better here. I wish I would have done better for my wife here. I wish I would have done better for my kids there. I wish I would have done better for my staff here. And even with God, there's moments where I feel like God has said something or shared something, and I didn't feel like it came through. Even I get disappointed with God. And let's be honest, the whole Red Robins thing has me a little shook too. I'm actually really upset about it. We went to Red Robin's a couple weeks ago, and we had to wait like an hour for our food. And I'm like, what's going on? And there's someone here who works at Red Robin's who's like, listen, we're tripling sales. I'm like, why are you closing? And, there's just, it's hard though. The truth is, if you have a heart and you consider yourself a human in this room, the reality is that disappointment is inevitable. Disappointment in relationships you have. Maybe one ended and you're disappointed that it ended. Maybe it's just friends, or maybe you wished you would have done things. Maybe circumstances in your life have been disappointed. Maybe you've been disappointed in yourself. But if you are a human in this room, disappointment is totally inevitable. And if I can say it this way, it's actually an honest part of living. See, disappointment means that you're learning who you are and maybe who you're not. Disappointment means that you are hoping, you're risking, you're loving, you're putting yourself out there like you're living. In order to have any sort of life, there's going to be disappointment because you're imperfect. The world's imperfect. Circumstances are imperfect. Disappointment is a part of it. If you're never disappointed, that could be because you're living below your own potential. To avoid disappointment is to avoid actually living. We can't avoid it. So if you are here and you have been, or you are, or you're just planning on being disappointed, that's okay. That's like totally normal. It can even mean something good is around the corner. Every major political or historical figure throughout history, every athlete you look up to, every celebrity has moments, great moments of disappointments. Winston Churchill, who was a huge figure in World War II and bringing really a beginning of a closure to World War II, he had his own forms of disappointment. He had this season of his life where basically he felt like he was chased by the black dog of depression. And he realized that it was much more constructive to actually reframe his disappointments as learning experiences in order to be able to cope better in the future and to use disappointments as a catalyst for his personal growth. It says that such soul searching provided him with new information about himself, the world, and with others. Every human being gets disappointed at some point. The Bible literally publishes resumes of failure all over the place. There's not one character that you read in the Bible that is not disappointed. Disappointment is throughout it. And a lot of people, I know sometimes we look at the Bible and we think that it's a book chock full of perfect people. The point of the Bible is that it's not. It's chock full of people who are imperfect, who are disappointed, and who are disappointing. And a God who consistently chases after those same people. It's a story of us, of our nature, human nature. For example, in Psalm 73 and 78, there's this guy named Asaph. And he confesses how he's failed, and he's disappointed because his failure in the midst of his enemies succeeding. And it's resulting in his own failure of faith. Like, God, how can I believe in you? And he puts it all on the table, and he says, in effect, I'm not handling this really well. Disappointment is a normal part of living. Disappointment, as much as it sucks, as much as I'm not like, don't go look for disappointment, it's going to happen. You will disappoint someone. Someone will disappoint you. A circumstance will disappoint you. You'll get what you want and realize there's something else you want around the corner. Disappointment is a real part of life. But where it becomes a problem is if we let disappointment continue to have its way, to leverage your thinking, leverage your emotions to go deeper. See, disappointment is a feeling. It's almost a reaction, but then it can progress if we're not careful. Depression, not depression, we'll get to that, but disappointments, it can move to this point of discouragement. And then beyond discouragement, if we wallow in it, it gets into disillusionment, then depression, and then defeats. And often, I think there's some of us in this room that are probably more in the disillusionment, depression, defeat state, and thinking that they are actually disappointed, but it started at disappointment. It's why we read in Scripture, and I shared this last week, and I'm going to share it every week of this series. You hear things in the Bible that say things like, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Be careful, because if you're not careful with how you handle your heart, your emotions, the center of who you are, your spirit, it will challenge the rest of your living. Elsewhere in this book called Romans, this guy named Paul, he's writing, and he says this: don't copy the behaviors and customs of the world, but let God transform you into a new person. How? By changing the way you think. And often, I think sometimes we face disappointment and then we wallow in it and we let it arrest us in that moment. But it's good for us to remember that although disappointment is inevitable, being discouraged is actually always a choice. So we're in this series called that word, a series on the emotions you can't control. And last week we started with the whole idea of anger. How do I deal with anger? And I talked about actually anger can be a good thing. Anger can be a warning sign, and a warning sign is a good thing. And if you weren't here last week, if you're watching online, you didn't see it, go to our podcast, go to YouTube, watch it. We actually crowdsourced these topics to figure out what are you really dealing with. And there was a myriad of them. And actually on our Instagram feed on Friday, we posted we're not hitting every emotion, but if you think dealing with sadness, dealing with failure, dealing with other things like that, we link other times that we've talked about this stuff. We talked about anger last week. This week we want to talk about the idea of feeling disappointed. What do I do with it? How do I make sure that we don't go down into a place of defeat or depression or disillusionment? How do we stop it? How do we understand discouragement? How do we walk with it and in it? And I'll be honest with you. Because discouragement is something we all face, there's never really one way of dealing with it. Because I know sometimes we come to these places, and I wish I could. I wish I can come here and be like, hey, listen, I've got 5 steps to move your discouragement to encouragement, right? To be too blessed to be stressed, right? I'm too anointed to be disappointed. I'm not going to say that. Anyone who can take your complex emotions and turn it into a really good key line is not doing you a favor. And the thing about discouragement is that we all feel it in different ways. There's a bit of a spectrum. I know some of you have very deep places of discouragement, whether it's your family life or history. Some of you have light discouragement. All of us are kind of on the spectrum of it. So I understand that there's complexity in this room. And so I just want to help you, guide you through it a little bit. Here's maybe some practices that I've used, that I've looked at, some things you find in Scripture that I found through researching through some of it. I just want to help you pastorally walk through this to start it, because discouragement doesn't have to be something that ruins you. Discouragement needs to be something that you use. And I think that discouragement can be these seeds where God can use to do something really great in your life. It's something that you can use to grow in strength. It's something that I think we can build a bit of resilience as we wade through discouragement. So there's a few things I want to share with you. The first is this, and I'm going to say this every single week because I think I need to. Name it. So I'm walking through one of the Psalms I actually talked about already, Psalm 73. It's actually one of my favorite personal Psalms. I was going through the Psalms just even in my own life over the last number of months, and I'll try to read about 5 Psalms a day. And I'll go through it, and this section has kind of always stuck out to me because I love the honesty of it. And I'm actually going to read a section of it at each mark. Do you mind if I do that with you? Well, you don't have a choice, but I might as well ask. I don't want to disappoint you. Anyways, Psalm 73. I just want to read the first 14 verses. I just have that one verse that really is going to pin the idea of name it down, but I'm going to read the section, and I'm just going to ask you to just listen. Psalm 73, starting in verse 1, it says this: "Truly God is good to Israel, to those whose hearts are pure. But as for me, I almost lost my footing. My feet were slipping and I was almost gone, for I envied the proud when I saw them prosper despite their wickedness. They seem to live such painless lives. Their bodies are so healthy and strong. They don't have troubles like other people. They're not plagued with problems like everyone else." Man, how many times have I felt that way? "They wear pride like a jeweled necklace and clothe themselves with cruelty. These fat cats," this was written during the 60s, "have everything their hearts could ever wish for. They scoff and speak only evil. In their pride, they seek to crush others. They boast against the very heavens, and their words strut throughout the earth. And so the people are dismayed and confused, drinking in all their words. What does God know?" they ask. "Does the Most High even know what's happening? Look at these wicked people, enjoying a life of ease while their riches multiply. Do I keep my heart pure for nothing? Do I keep myself innocent for no reason? I get nothing but trouble all day long. every morning brings me pain. Yo, that's honest. What you have here is this sense where he's naming it. God, I'm discouraged. I'm even a little upset with it. And you'll hear me say this every single week. Avoiding whatever emotion you're feeling is just as bad and destructive as wallowing in it. Not naming your emotion is like going to the ER and never telling the doctor where you hurt. It's bad for you. And the reason why I say it is because I think there's some of us who maybe grew up in environments where being angry or feeling discouragement or even being jealous or things like that, it's like, it's one of those, oh, don't do that. Don't say that. Don't give into it. And I'm telling you, these are real things that you feel. And throughout Scripture, and even in the Psalms, you see that these people don't hold back their emotions. Name your emotion. What discouraged you? Who discouraged you? How did you discourage yourself? What are you discouraged about? Get it all out there. And what feelings are you feeling associated with that? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you disillusioned? Are you losing faith? Are you just wondering why you're here? Name it all. Get it all out into the open. Whether you got to buy yourself a feeling journal or something, get it out there. But I can say this, though. They say, though, specifically with discouragement, what you want to do is you want to invite someone else into naming it. You don't want to do it alone. See, disappointment is the fire, isolation is the accelerator. The worst thing for you to do is to keep it in and not say anyone. I'll explain it this way. One of my counseling sessions I went to a couple years ago, because I do it, because it's a healthy thing to do, everyone should get a checkup from the neck up. If you're 25 and you're not seeing a counselor yet, you're doing life wrong. By the way, anyways, I differ. And one time, when I was with my counselor, he was explaining how there's two kinds of people who deal with emotions. There's people who have an interior world and people in an exterior world. I'm an interior world. I deal with a lot of things on the inside. I don't express a lot of emotion. I work a lot of stuff inside. Those are people who have a hard time explaining what they're feeling. They feel everything, but they can't explain it really well. My wife's this kind of person where she lives in an outside world. She's able to express easily what she's feeling and what she's thinking. And we've had to manage that communication. There's some of you in this room that are inside world people, some of you are outside world people. And outside world people tend to have just a better ability to describe their emotion and to identify it. But whatever world you live in, you can't be isolated and use it as an excuse to say nothing. Invite someone you trust into it. Let someone know you're discouraged. Figure out what that looks like and why you feel that way. What discouraged you? What disappointed you? Who disappointed you? Work through it. Name it. Identify it. I will say this every week. Name what you're feeling. It's the first step to actually finding health and healing. Do it. Second is this, is to, of course, own it. I'm going to continue. I don't know where that slide went. It may have gotten deleted. Is own it. This is in, it's right there. Look at that. Psalm 73, again, it was my fault. And I want to continue reading it from 15 to 26. It's 11 verses, but just bear with me. He goes on, okay? He says, if I had really spoken this way to others, I would have been a traitor to your people. So I tried to understand why the wicked prosper. But what a difficult task it is. So he's like, I'm beginning to process this now. I'm beginning to work through why it is. Then I went into your sanctuary, O God, and I finally understood the destiny of the wicked. Truly, you put them on a slippery path and sent them sliding over the cliff to destruction. In an instant, they are destroyed, completely swept away by terrors. When you arise, O Lord, you will laugh at their silly ideas as a person laughs at dreams in the morning. Then I realized that my heart was bitter, and I was all torn up inside. I was so foolish and ignorant. I must have seemed like a senseless animal to you. Yet I still belong to you. You hold my right hand. You guide me with your counsel, leading me to a glorious destiny. Whom have I in heaven but you? I desire you more than anything on earth. My health may fail, my spirit may grow weak, but God remains the strength of my heart. He is mine forever. This is where good, serious work begins to happen. Disappointment happens, like I said, on a spectrum, and I know that there's different stories here. But questions help us parse through the reality of why we're disappointed and what we do about it. For example, if you're in this room and you're like 22, 23, 24, you're disappointed and you've lost hope for your future, you are disillusioned. You've lost perspective. But that's the thing about feeling these emotions. It can make you feel lost in it, that's all you can see. Asking questions help you step back and get a bit of a 10,000-foot view on your actual situation. So I'm going to ask you to ask certain questions. If you're disappointed now, if you're working with someone who is disappointed, here's some questions to help guide the conversation. First question is this: why was it a disappointment? So you've labeled who, you've labeled what, but why? Why was it so disappointing? And the reason why I ask this is because some of us get disappointed because of our values were violated or our preferences were violated. Those are two very different things. Some of you like things done a certain way, and it didn't go your way. And you're like, oh no, you didn't, right? And you're disappointed. Where some of you were like, no, I'm disappointed because a value was violated. Values are something you hold on to. If you're disappointed because someone violated a value of yours, because something important to you that happened that wasn't, you trusted them with it and it didn't happen, or you're going after something and it didn't work out, those values are things you hold on to. Preferences are not always something you hold on to. If you don't like the way something's done, that's not necessarily worth wallowing in. It also helps you parse through your expectations. Am I a bit of a perfectionist? Did I have way too high of expectations on them? Now, I have a really hard time talking about people's expectations because this is a big room. And some of your expectations are too high, and some of your expectations are way too low. But what I'm saying is this: if this is something you get disappointed in often, maybe it's actually not everyone else's problem, but maybe it's actually your problem. If you find that everyone else is violating you, or everyone else is disappointing you, and you haven't had a chance to first look inside and going, are my expectations too high? Are my preferences unfair? Have I not communicated clearly? Then you can begin going, okay, maybe I've got to make some internal adjustments in my life. Maybe I got to work through this. Maybe I expected too much. But like I said, if you're going, no, I was in a relationship with someone and they violated my trust, I value trust, that was super disappointing. You should be disappointed about that. That's a value you should hold on to. You should hold tight to. Don't lower your expectations there. You hold on to that. So asking this question forces you to ask, why were you disappointed? What was going on there? Why did you feel like you can actually be disappointed? The second question I want to ask is this: can I change anything now? Because I feel like so much of our fight is actually with things we can't control. So many of us are trying to control things we can't control. And this is a good question. You got to own whatever happened, and you've got to focus on what you actually can control. There are certain times where you're in a job, you've got to work there, and you're pretty disappointed because it's not the job you thought you were getting. You didn't think you were going to get that job. Oh, you got it. You didn't think it was going to turn out that way, and you're super disappointed. But like, well, I can't do anything now. I mean, I got to keep working. I got to make money. I got to pay rent, and I don't have any prospects going on. What you can't control, you can't entirely control the job you've been tasked to do and hired to do and paid to do. But what you can control is your attitude with it. How do I get the best out of this? What can I learn? How do I treat others around me? How can I make this the best I possibly can? Now, maybe in this question is also this, is did I actually do my best? When I look back, did I do my best? And if you can say you did your best, that's what you could control, and that's what you can hold on to. Maybe it didn't turn out the way they wanted it. Maybe you disappointed them. Maybe you disappointed yourself, but you're going, I did the best I possibly could. With whatever resources I had, I did the best I could. Then you need to be like, that is what I can control. That is what I know. And that's what I know I need to continue to do. Maybe it's with the people around you. Sometimes there are people in our life who will disappoint you on a regular basis. And we need to begin to assess the expectations we put on them. Maybe they can't meet those expectations, and that's what you need to know the relationship's going to be like. Don't expect something from them that they actually can't give you, because the fault is actually yours, not theirs. Maybe you need to assess your values in the face of it all. What can you control? Don't focus so much on the things you can't control, because that is an unending loop. You can't do anything about it. You kind of have to grieve it, eat a tub of ice cream over it, or shoot something. Probably an animal is probably best in a hunting season. Just find some way to release that tension of what you can't control, but you need to focus your time, your attention, and your energy on the things you can control in your disappointments. Notice I had to really clarify that statement because I don't know who's in this room. Can I change anything about the situation right now? Next question is, what good can come from it? This is a super unfair question for me to ask you to ask yourself, but I found this helps so much. For example, let's say you were in a relationship. You guys were hanging out, it was going really good, maybe you were dating for a good while, and then it just didn't pan out. It just didn't work out. What good came from it? What was good about it? What did you learn about yourself? What are the things that you hope, if you were treated really well, then honor that. I was treated really well in that relationship, and I should expect to be treated well in my next. Learn from those things. Maybe it's good that it didn't work out because you're realizing, that was not a good relationship. That wasn't a good situation. Maybe it was a job that you got changed from, or something else happened. Maybe if your attitude worked really well and you were in it and you go, man, I actually learned a lot by gritting and baring my teeth and working with integrity. What good came from it? I'm telling you, this is so important because gratitude is the healing balm of a disappointed heart. I can't say that enough. Gratitude is the healing balm to a disappointed heart. It's not blind thankfulness. It's being mindful in the midst of pain in the things that did go well and are going well. It reminds you that life is multifaceted. Maybe you can't be happy about this situation you're disappointed in, but what situations are you happy about in your life? What relationships are you thankful for in your life? What things has God done for you that worked out the way you thought it was going to work out? What are promises that have been fulfilled? Who are people done things in your life? What are ways that you've not been disappointed? Think about those things. Remind yourself that life is multifaceted. This is one part of your life. This is one disappointment, but it's not everything. It's not your whole life. Thankfulness is the gateway to renewed joy and zeal. It's the way we begin processing and working for excitement again, for life again, no matter what situation we face ourselves in. There's this pastor, his name is John Mark Comer, and I like a lot of the things he says. And one thing that I heard from this week, he said this: the future is easy to give to God, for the simple fact that we don't actually have it. It's like, I'm trusting God with my future. Well, of course you are. You don't have it. It's easy to do. We're blind to it. But he says, really, all we have is the present, the here and now, this moment. That's the hard stuff to trust God with. And that's where gratitude comes in. We renew our trust in God. We renew our trust in people. When we give our here now, when we expose it for what it is right now. What can I be thankful for now? What is actually happening? I don't want to waste this moment. I don't want to waste this opportunity. I don't want to waste this disappointment. What do I do with it? This is why the psalmist that we read in Psalm 73, he says this: "Yeah, I still belong to you. In all my disappointment, everything I face, everyone seems to be winning when I'm losing, but you hold my right hand. Listen, you guide me with your counsel, leading me to a glorious destiny, whom I have in heaven, but you, God. I desire you more than anything on earth. My health may fail and my spirit may grow weak, but God remains the strength of my heart. He is mine forever. There is this renewed gratitude for what he does have, and it's God. This is why whenever the Bible talks about prayer, gratitude is always included in it. It says, enter my gates, enter my presence, enter a place where I am there with thanksgiving in your heart. Prayer builds faith, it grows hope, it increases your imagination of what God can do, and it starts with being grateful. What good is coming from this, can come from this? And maybe when someone has disappointed you, I'll leave you with this question. When have I disappointed someone else? When was the last time I disappointed someone? How did I want to be treated? And you may process their disappointment with a bit more grace. Now, I know there's a degree. There's some people who do grave violations, and they shouldn't just forgive and forget. But there's a sense where there should be this agreement, especially among people who follow Jesus. This pursuit of you don't have to trust everybody, but we know that the end result and the best result of any human being is that they come to grips with God and God comes to grip with them. Lastly, keep going. I read the last verse of the psalm, but as for me, how good it is to be near God. I've made the sovereign Lord my shelter, and I will tell everyone about the wonderful things to do. I'm going to tell you this. You're going to hate it. This is the point where I tell you, you got to pull up your bootstraps and keep going. Don't let disappointment stop you. You got to keep going. This is the point where you get to realize, what do I value? What do I want to value in my life? For myself, for others, my relationship with God. What do I want to go after? What do I want to chase after? And you hold on to that stuff. Because here's the thing. Life is not straightforward. Life doesn't move in a straight line. There's a lot of pitfalls. There's some dips. There's some highs. There's some lows. I mean, life is weird. It's crazy. It doesn't always go your way. And sometimes it really does. But sometimes it doesn't. But you got to keep going. You got to keep pressing through. You got to keep hoping. You got to keep living. You got to keep believing. You got to keep knowing that there's more ahead of you. This is why life really is reserved for those who choose to risk it, to just keep going. See, if you see your life as finite, if you build your life on things that are finite, like what you value and what brings meaning to you are things that don't last, then your enjoyment and peace will not last either. I've chosen in my life to put my hope and value in the infinite, which means that when someone disappoints me, I still see the infinite in them and go, but God has grace and God still has a story and a plan for their life. They may be messing it up, but I know that I'm imperfect, but I know that I serve a God who can take crooked lines and make them straight. I see the value in what I do at work, so that even if I get discouraged, if things don't work out, I go, but what I'm doing means more than just one moment or one day. I serve a God who sees all of history and who corrects chaos and brings order and peace. So maybe it's not so much of going, I don't value so much having a relationship as much as I value what I want in a relationship. I want someone who is peace. I want someone who I can trust. I want someone who I can share my life with. And I may not get it in this relationship, and it may be disappointing. I don't get that, but I hold on to my value because that is what's important. I want to keep driving forward that way. But sometimes our discouragement is because we base our life on finite things, and God is inviting us to base our life on infinite things. He says, you are his workmanship. You are his greatest masterpiece, and he is a work that he is bringing and is faithful to bring to completion in you. Which means God's never done with you. I haven't told many people this. In fact, I probably tell a very small few people, and maybe my staff, maybe a couple others, but for the first few years here at the project, I dealt with a lot of insecurity. A lot of it. Get a lot of criticism, and sometimes it's just internal criticism, sometimes it's external, and I'd get discouraged pretty fast. And so I made a practice after a little bit, and I don't do it now, but for a couple years I did this, is I had paper notes, and after every message, I would walk down the aisle, and I would throw my message in the garbage. It was a psychological thing for me. That when I was disappointed at how I landed, or if I didn't think things worked well, or whatever the case, I told myself the moment is done. I have to trust God. It's something I can't control anymore. And I want to choose to live in the now and to invest in the next. That moment's done. I want to choose what God has for me now. And I want to do that's what's going to give the best going forward. And I had to do that because sometimes discouragement is a series of discouragement. Sometimes you're in seasons of it. Sometimes it's just momentary. But can I encourage you? Keep going. Keep pressing forward. And I honestly think it starts with gratitude. I think thankfulness is the gateway to renewed joy and renewed zeal. Last week, I left you with this question. In the midst of your anger, ask this question: am I hurting right now, and how can I be kinder to myself and others around me? Compassion, they say, is the way to reverse anger in the immediate moment. So if you find yourself in a place where you're discouraged, the question I leave you with tonight is this: who and what can I be thankful for right now? Who and what can I be thankful for right now? If you've been here, whether it's tonight or the last couple of weeks, and you've heard us talk about Jesus, you've got questions. Jesus always said, come follow me. He didn't say, just come agree with everything I've said right now. He said, no, just come watch my life. Come here. Come see what I do. It's an invitation to watch him. And we found one of the best ways is just reading about Jesus and thinking about him. So there's this really, really easy ebook resource we send people when you text the word NEXT to 555-888. No one's going to text you back. It's totally anonymous. And all it is just a good starter for you to maybe start that journey hearing about Jesus, asking about him. So, you're angry, you're discouraged, and you may be a little jealous. We want to help you this month handle those things. This week, the question to ask yourself is this: who and what can I be thankful for right now? Let me pray for you. God, thank you that we can be honest with what we're walking through. We can be honest with the emotions we can't control, the hardships, stuff that seems to sometimes take over all the time. God, I pray that you help us to find your grace in the midst of it. As we ask ourselves really difficult questions, pray that helps us parse through what's really important to us and maybe what's not so important. To distinguish between what we control and what we can't control. To help distinguish what we can be thankful for in the midst of things that seem really hard. And God, that you give us a grace to keep going. It's hard. It's not always easy. But Lord, I pray this is a good start for people in this room. And be feeling that they're in a season of discouragement. That for the rest of us, it would help us deal with other people who are working through discouragement. God, help us to see these things as ways where we can hear your voice, come in contact with you, and experience even life change because of it. Amen. Guys, thanks for hanging out tonight. Thanks for being with us. Always love that you came on Sunday night. We'll see you next week as we finish up our series on the emotions you can't control. Have a good one, guys.